Yep.
So this is my gefilte fish loaf, and I'm going to make it in my Bubby's gefilte fish wooden bowl. And this was her chopper. So I remember as a young child, she lived with us for most of my life. And she made the gefilte fish. And of course, you know, she brought the fish and she would sit there in front of, you know, on the counter with this chopper and chop and chop and chop and chop. And she would taste it. I guess that was like the original sushi, right? She would taste it and see what it tasted like to see if it was the right flavor. And then she'd make her balls and she would boil them. And as a child, I did not appreciate all the work that she did, or even how good the gefilte fish was, because, you know, I didn't really love it. And the house didn't smell so wonderful when she made it. You know, it's like it permeates the whole premise. But, you know, now that I'm, you know, when I was a mom and a mother, then you know, when I was a mother and a Bubby, you really appreciate all the work that went into it. Later on in life, you know, my mom would just take a jar full of fish and she would take a carrot and she would garnish the jarred fish a little bit and serve it on a platter. And then years later, you know, we became very friendly with Rabbi Loeb of blessed memory, and he would go to New York and purchase gefilte fish for a group of his friends from his favorite place in the city for Passover. So we would put our order in and he would drive up to New York and come back with all this gefilte fish for people who put orders in, and it was delicious. And it was a little more firm. It was like a loaf. And I don't know where he got it from, but after he passed away, I was talking to one of the congregants of the synagogue that we belonged to, and I said, we really missed Rabbi Loeb, but I said, oh, I missed the gefilte fish. And it was a woman named Sonia Goodman. I don't know if any of you know Sonia, but Sonia says, I have a recipe that tastes very similar. So she sent it to me, and I'm looking to see if there's a date. This is March 2010. So she sent me this in 2010, and I've been making this ever since. So I'm happy to be able to share it with you, but this is Sonia Goodman's recipe, trying to copycat what Rabbi Loeb used to purchase for us in New York City. So I buy the Ungers. That's, you know, the brand that I particularly like to make it with the loaf. But this year, because of COVID, we did a lot of curbside pickup. So I was able to get one Ungers and one ABC. So we'll see. It's a hybrid this year. So for those of you, so this is what the Ungers looks like. And it comes, both of these loaves come the same way. They're raw, they're not cooked. So like when you make the gefilte fish loaf from the jar, it's already cooked gefilte fish balls. This is actually raw fish. So it's sort of almost like a hamburger consistency, like ground beef, except for it's really fine. And I just take it and I drop it in my bowl. Sometimes it sticks a little bit, so I try to. And I've tried to make this recipe in half. So this is with 2 20-ounce loaves. You can make it, and it will fit like a 9x13 casserole. But if you have like an 8x8 casserole and it's just want to make a smaller amount, you can do it with one loaf.
But be careful if you're buying it this time of year, because they sell a 2-pack, but the loaves are smaller.
That's right. So this is 40 ounces. So 2
Right.
20-ounce loaves.
So if you're going to do the recipe, you want to buy 2 of the single, not the double pack, because they're actually smaller loaves.
And you have to make sure they're marked, because there are some.
I wish you could see Ariel's face. she just like, sort of like, Mom, what are you doing? So,
I just like to eat it when it's done.
okay, so it's very easy. So just put it in the bowl. That anyone can do. Okay, then what I do is I just take 3 whole eggs. And just to make it a little bit easier for myself, I sort of like beat it up a little bit before I put it in. And I love serving this with really like hot horseradish, which I have not been able to find. Has anyone here that's seen the Tolkoffs recently? I have not been able to find it in any grocery store.
I only saw Gold's and Potemkin.
Yeah, so I wonder if Tolkoffs is even in business anymore.
I think they are. I don't know.
They're in business. They don't work out of Baltimore as much anymore. They have a plant in California now.
Okay, so the 3 eggs, and I mix it first. Okay, so then after that, it's 1 large onion, grated. And you could grate it in the food processor. I just have this hand chopper that I just chop it up in that I bought years ago from, it was like one of those kitchen party companies. They come to your house. I've never been able to find it again, but it's one of the best ones I've got. So I'm just going to chop up the onion.
Going back to horseradish for a moment, instead of looking for it in the kosher section, go to the seafood section. Giant usually has it in the seafood area.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My mother used to take the gefilte fish out of the jars and recook it, like with onion and carrot and celery and all of that, like in a fish soup, just like if you were making it from scratch, because my grandmother never wrote down how to make the gefilte fish from scratch.
Well, I never liked gefilte fish. I only knew it from a jar and I never liked it. My family never served it when I was growing up, and as an adult, I only ate it that way. And then when my younger son got married, his wife had us over, my daughter-in-law, for a Shabbos meal, and she served gefilte fish. So I tried it because it looked different. I mean, it clearly wasn't a piece from a can. It was,
Right.
and I tasted it and I really liked it. And so she buys the loaf and bakes them.
Yeah.
So I've always been now doing the loaf and baking it, but I've never added stuff. So I wanted to see what it does with adding stuff.
Now I'm just going to chop up the 2 carrots. And I find that the carrots really add some sweetness to it. And I also, on another note, I also will grate and shred carrots and put it in my meatloaf. And along with, some breadcrumbs or matzah meal. And it really gives a meatloaf a really wonderful flavor. It's sort of like my secret ingredient. So if any of you want to try that in the future, it's really good in meatloaf.
It's
So,
not secret anymore.
no, it's not secret.
I do it in my meat sauce just to add some nutrition to it, like for pasta sauce. Not for Passover, of course.
You can have the sauce.
That's true. I do make meatballs for Passover. Serve it on quinoa.
Yeah, I have a friend who makes Swedish meatballs, part of her Passover meal.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't bother with the meat, so it doesn't matter to me, but
I have a lot of carnivores coming. They need-
I like the meat. I just don't eat it anymore. Another story. But I did make gefilte fish from scratch one time. And
Okay,
It's
so now I'm
not
just
up
putting the
place for
carrots in.
2 weeks. 2 weeks it smelled.
Yeah.
Not only that, but when I bought the fish from the butcher and I asked him to grind it, and which he did, and gave me the whole
Okay.
package. And when I got
So
it,
the next
thoroughly
ingredient
done,
will be your
Fish meal.
matzo meal. And make sure at this time of year that your matzo meal is kosher for Passover. Now, sometimes you just assume matzo meal is, kosher for Passover all year round, but it's not. So just make sure that when you are cooking for the holidays, that you just give an extra look and just check to see if the matzo meal that you may already have open in your pantry is kosher for Passover. So I put a half cup of the matzo meal in. And it doesn't really matter what order you put everything in because you're just going to mix it all up together anyway. So now we've got our 2 packages of fish, our 3 eggs, our 1 large onion, our 2 carrots, our half a cup of matzo meal. And the only thing left is salt and pepper to taste. And I usually just do a half a teaspoon of each. So, because remember the loaf already has some seasoning mixed in. And this comes the fun part, just mixing it all together. It's all in the bowl. And you just want to make sure that the fish is well defrosted so everything mixes in with it. Now, I'm sort of like a hands-on cook. I mix it a little bit with this spatula, but then after a moment or two, I just take my hands and just smash it all together. Or like Haley says, I mush it. And that way, you know that all the carrots and onions are evenly distributed within the loaf. There it goes. Didn't do such a good job at chopping it up. This would be Ariel's favorite part. As a child, she hated getting her hands really dirty. Now you want to do some?
Mhm. You're giving
It's
away
your
all her
demonstration.
secrets.
I'll just stay over here.
When you bake this, I have on here, cook it on a 350 oven for an hour to an hour and a half. And there's sometimes it takes an hour and a half, and there's other times within an hour, if I don't take it out, it would burn. So you really need to, like, depending on your oven, just look at it in around an hour. The top should get like a golden brown cover, and you can color, and you can even sort of use like a cake tester to make sure, or just touch it to make sure that it's firm. You don't want it to be like mushy inside. So it's all mixed really well at this point. And I'm going to spray my casserole dish with cooking spray, or if you don't have cooking spray, just use a little bit of oil. Super easy recipe. Put everything in. And when it's done, I just cut it into squares. I garnish it, put it on a platter, and it's really, it's delicious. And so super easy. I hope you enjoy it. I try to spread it out pretty evenly. And like I said, if I've never made it with the jar before, but I know that my son-in-law's mom has. That's her recipe. And it's really interesting if you get a chance, try them both and taste them side by side and just see, what the family says.
The
They're
ingredients,
really completely.
the The one with the jar takes mayonnaise also.
Oh, okay.
But the rest of the ingredients, I mean, I'd have to look up the amounts, but the actual ingredients, eggs, carrot, onion, those are the same.
Yeah, I found a little area that it wasn't, I thought I mixed it really well, but
Mhm.
found an area that was not. Yeah, there's only so much you can do to add to doctor it up.
Well, I think it tastes delicious.
Enjoy.
So what are some other recipes that you like to make?
Well, I got some cookbooks from Paula Scheuer a couple years ago. I don't know if you've had any of her cookbooks, but she has a recipe for chocolate biscotti that uses almond flour instead of matzo meal or matzo cake. They are delicious. They don't have that Passover
Oh,
taste, but
what it
very-
looks like.
Oh, it's fine.
Nice.
Okay.
and
And
you
I'm
know,
gonna go stick it in the oven.
they're lower in carbs.
Where do you find almond flour?
They sell it at 7 Mile. I mean, it is quite expensive.
And Trader
However,
Joe's has it.
the OU has said that you can use Trader Joe's almond flour. So I've